Well, Zandile Gumede may have reclaimed her position as eThekwini ANC chairperson, but she won't be able to take up that role because of the party's step-aside rule. It states that leaders implicated in serious crimes or criminally charged must step down from their positions until the case against them is finalized. Gumede heads back to court in July, where she faces charges including fraud, corruption and money laundering. She's just another troubled ANC politician elected to a key position by branches. Some would say a smack in the face of the ANC's national office. Let's unpack this with political analyst Lukhona Mnguni. So, Lukhona, before we actually talk about the consequences for the step-aside rule, let's actually talk about the importance and power that Zandile Gumede actually holds within the ANC.
Well, it's an interesting power and influence that she has, whether it is of her own making or she represents a much broader alliance that coalesces around her name because they do need to have a candidate. It is quite clear that since her departure as mayor of the city of eThekwini, the sort of dissolution of that leadership cohort of hers and the appointment of task teams in eThekwini, she has managed to regroup certain forces, and other forces have managed to regroup around her. And I do think that it's quite interesting to see how someone, for example, like Beginduli, who was regional secretary during her leadership, and quite a very serious backer of hers when her, legal troubles started, had now become disassociated with her and was standing with Thabani Nyawo on the other slate. So it does tell you that what we can read from eThekwini is not just the power of Zandile Gumede, but also the change and shifts that are happening politically as people are trying to realign to secure power bases for the future, for them to be able to broker in terms of the upcoming provincial conference and ultimately in terms of the national conference. As you would remember, Shahan, eThekwini is one of the biggest regions of the ANC in the country.
Yeah. So talk to me about whether or not this election can be seen as a threat to Cyril Ramaphosa, given her allegiance to the RET faction, some would argue, and, as you mentioned, the clout this region holds because of the large numbers.
Well, I'm not too sure what it actually means for Cyril Ramaphosa at the moment, because I have now moved on from the binary of RET versus CR factions in the ANC. As you can tell, there is an emergence of other players, not least Dr. Zandile Gumede, who was seen on videos that were circulating on social media, addressing those delegates who were aligned or are aligned to Zandile Gumede in various venues, which was outside conference. They were doing what we call in factions a head count, where you try and see as a faction how many people are with you in the region or whatever structure is to be elected. So I think we are a bit more ahead of the RET versus CR. As I've just said to you, someone who would have been considered RET in 2017, Beginduli was with Nyawo. It might be that he was still RET, but he was with Nyawo for local reasons and dynamics within eThekwini. It's quite clear, though, Shahan, to me, that KZN is going to try and be as united and cohesive a force as they can be, at least much better than 2017. The province was quite divided ahead of Nasrec, and I think right now what they are trying to do is contest their own local issues, but with a very common vision in mind that KZN cannot afford to suffer what they suffered at Nasrec, where they walk away from conference and there's no one in the top 6 leadership of the ANC nationally who hails from KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah. Okay. What about the overall questionable people who are being elected? And I can talk about Mpumalanga. We can now talk about KwaZulu-Natal, eThekwini region. Despite the serious allegations leveled against them, that, of course, is something the ANC has been trying to rid itself of. This corruption, the party that is basically leading corruption in this country. Yet we have people facing serious allegations who are being elected into key positions within the party. What message does that actually send to the public?
Well, it sends a message that the ANC has indeed reached a state of paralysis and it is unable to resuscitate itself within to a point of, you know, political standing that is respectable, political standing that is admirable, political standing that produces the kind of leaders I believe society is looking for: incorruptible, morally upright, ethical, intellectual, visionary, and quite provide a solid base for the development of the country. So the ANC is unable to produce all of those things. And I think the ANC is actually aware that it has hit a serious cul-de-sac insofar as this renewal and unity of its is supposed to be happening. And so, Shahan, what it tells us is that you cannot expect a party that is led by questionable figures who have all sorts of allegations against them, whether they've been tested in court or not. But in the top six of the ANC, we can name a number of people who are, you know, tainted by various allegations of corruption, various allegations of maladministration and the likes, but also just leaders who don't show any empathy to society. If you look at how, for example, Minister Gwede Mantashe handles questions of communities questioning, you know, licenses for mining or exploration, it doesn't tell of a story of leaders who are embedded in their communities. So to believe that the lower structures will produce outcomes that are drastically different to the type of leaders who are present at the top is actually expecting quite a lot in the ANC. And the fundamental question is whether or not the current crop of leaders in the ANC represent an ANC that is, you know, expressed in the constitution of the ANC, in discussion documents such as Through the Eye of the Needle, Strategies and Tactics. And I beg to differ and say, actually, at the very top, the leadership is not characterized by people who stand for the type of ANC that people want to see.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your insight. Always a pleasure talking to you. Lukhona Mnguni, of course, is a political analyst.